was helping my parents move their books back into the house after Hurricane Katrina, and I came across an old, so old it was not yellowed with age, but brown with age, copy of Robin Hood. I don't remember ever seeing this book before. I opened it up, and in the flyleaf was a little child's signature. It was my dad's name. He was about 8 years old, to judge from the handwriting. So I went into the house. Dad, look what I found. Look what I found. He picked it up, opened that page, and this sweet smile came over his face. You know that kind of smile. The book that you loved the most as a kid. When I was 8 years old, the two books that I loved the most were Sprockets, the Little Robot, and the Bible for Little Tots. You probably remember the best books of your childhood, too. I'm sure you do, because otherwise you wouldn't be watching a video about books for children. In this little segment, what I'd like to do is look at the children's books, Catholic children's books, that I think are going to be the classics of someone's childhood. And I'd like to start with the classic of all times, of course, the Bible. And of children's Bibles that are available right now, I think this one is going to become the classic that 20, 30 years from now, someone is going to look at and say, I remember this book. I remember the beautiful pictures. That's why they're going to remember this book. Classic Bible stories. You can't go wrong with it. But what they'll remember the most are the pictures that had so much detail that they could just sit there and look at them. This is how children contemplate. Give them beautiful art. Beautiful, warm pictures. So the story, it'll take you all the way through the Bible. Plenty to look at. Plenty to remember. If my favorite book at age 8 was the Bible for Little Tots, this is going to be somebody else's favorite book at, I would say, age 6 to 8. They're going to remember it the rest of their lives. So, for one, classic, the children's Bible. We do have a one that they probably won't remember as well. It's a board book Bible, but it's just too precious not to mention. Again, classic Bible stories with little tabs. And the best part is this is a book for lap reading, so that the grown-ups have something to read out loud, even though there's very little text in the book. The grown-ups do have some extra story material. And again, the artwork is so much worth looking at. So this one, it's for children who are too young to develop memories from it, but a classic. Get them started with something like this. That's just an aside. Another thing that is sure to become a classic, actually already is a good solid book of saints. And this one has been in print over 25, 30 years. We keep revising it, putting it out. 57 Stories of Saints. What's good about this one is it's written with a lot of action. It's sort of along the lines of a novel, historical fiction, with the saints as the main character. So very memorable, puts them right in the midst of this person's life, the way they had to make choices, the things they were confronted with. Again, some beautiful pictures, but this is for the child who really likes to read. This is for the children who are waiting, they'll pick up anything that puts them in the midst of a story. And because these are stories of the saints, you're giving them something that they'll build a foundation on. They establish relationships with these people whose virtue they can emulate, whose lives will serve as examples for them, set them on a very good track. 57 Saints, already a classic. It's going to be someone else's, I remember that kind of book. Let me strongly recommend that one to you. For Easter time, there are many legends associated with the Passion of Christ and His resurrection. And we have a beautiful book that brings them together. This is going to be the classic Easter book, the Jesus Garden. It brings together those Easter legends like the dogwood tree, the robin, and presents the gospel of the passion and death and resurrection of Jesus in terms of these elements of nature that our tradition has seen as participating and benefiting from the resurrection of the Lord. Again, it's the artwork that's going to do it for this story. The legends have been out, they've been published in other formats, but not this beautifully. And that's going to make the Jesus Garden a Catholic children's classic. One of my best friends illustrated another book that has classic potential, and that's my first book about Mary. Sister Julia Mary, whom you know from the other Best Catholic Book videos, is the illustrator of this. Sister Christine Virginia Orfeo is the author. And this gives you the story of Our Lady, her life in sacred scripture, the background of the different Marian titles, stories of Mary's apparitions, and then how to pray the rosary. This has already been translated into Spanish, so another helpful way to spread devotion to Mary. If the children are bilingual or being raised in a bilingual family, all the better. If they're like my little niece and learning Spanish, you can get this in Spanish. But again, my first book about Mary, classic potential. And finally, the First Communion Remembrance book. So this, the classic potential of a book like this, you can't underestimate, because you're not just giving them a book, you're giving them the memory of a very profound encounter with Jesus in their life. This has the presentation page, pages for special remembrances from the grown-ups in their lives, places for pictures, and best of all is a whole, like a catechesis on the Mass and the Eucharist. So every time they go back to relive their First Communion memories, they're also being reinitiated in their knowledge of the faith. So it's something that will constantly teach the children about the Mass, help them to enter more fully into that celebration that they were able finally to participate in their First Communion. So the First Communion memory book, another Catholic child's classic. In later editions, we'll talk about different age levels and the special books for those levels, but the ones that I consider the classics that will be remembered for the rest of their lives, these are they. So I hope this has been helpful to you, and we'll talk about some more books in another time. Thank you.